Hi everyone, my name is Kayla and welcome back to Kay's Hidden Shelf where we talk about books. Today I'm going to share with you everything that I read back in April. Slowly but surely we are catching up on these wrap-up videos. Now back in April I was the team captain for the Golden Bards over at the TBR Blitz Readathon that was hosted by the Keymark Discord. Overall it was a month of great reading with a new favorite here and there, so I'm really excited to share it with you. Let's go ahead and dive in with the first one, which is House of Chains, book 4 in the Malazan series. This was such a big difference in comparison to the first three. Up to this point, Dead House Gates was my favorite out of the series so far, and it is a close contender with House of Chains. I loved this. It did start off quite heavy, and it did stick that way for a while. However, all of the developments, some of the payoffs that we get was just so worth all of the investment in the first three books. At this point, going into a new book in the Malazan series, I never know what to expect. And this was another one of those. I didn't know what to expect going in, and for Memories of Ice, it was a bit of a tough, dense read for me, despite some of the circumstances being really intriguing. This just was fantastic for me. Things started to click, things started making sense at this point in the series for me, and overall, I just had a great time following the characters, the story, and as you can see, I tabbed a bit more as those little aha moments started kicking in. Due to getting more payoff in this book, comparison to the others, it created satisfying scenes and anticipation for what's to come next. Now, Malazan is not short on heavy emotional scenes, and there was a lot of that in this. Despite all of that, despite all of the nature of the story, the character circumstances, and those really heavy scenes, I ended up blowing through this. I think I read it in about a week or a week and a half. Despite the chunk that this is, I had a really hard time putting this one down. In terms of this series so far, and would I recommend this to a friend? I would say maybe. If you are considering picking up Malazan but you're not sure, I would say wait for one of two things. Either read it with a friend who's also interested in reading it, as I've found that has helped me not only in my experiences with it, kind of breaking down everything that I have read, because it is emotionally and mentally heavy to take in, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The second one is really wait until you are ready and don't jump in both feet, so to speak. The reason I say this is because if you jump in saying, I'm going to read all of these books in such and such time, you might get burnt out. This is a series that demands a lot, and like I said, is mentally and emotionally taxing. It has heavy themes, heavy topics. There's a lot to keep track of from the characters, the world, you name it. This is a series I would say take one step at a time. Judge how you're feeling and don't push yourself to really dive in and just plow through it, because you will burn out likely. And being able to talk with this book about a friend, either who's read it before or reading it for the first time, will help you to break down the experiences you're going through as you read the series. This is one that might not be for everyone. Some will love it, some it won't work for, and some might be in the middle. But I really think it's worth giving a try. If you want to dip your toes in, give it a try, see if it's for you. If not, you can put it down and potentially come back to it later. But I really think this series is more one for the long game if you are feeling comfortable enough to make it that far. Overall, this is a series that's had its ups and downs for me. Some books I've loved, some not so much. And overall, the payoffs is what I'm in for at this point. I love keeping track of characters, detailed stories, backgrounds, histories, you name it, and this is no exception. Also, having friends to help motivate me as I'm reading through and break down scenes that maybe I had a hard time with and I need a bit more exploration or encouragement to get through. That was invaluable throughout the reading experience so far. Now, we are planning a live show to discuss this in full depth, so I will have that announcement up as soon as we have a date. After that, I finished a carryover from March, which was Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering. This is another chunker, as you can see, and I did receive this physical copy in exchange for an honest review. However, I did go out and get the audiobook in order to immersion read this. This was a masterful story that had a refreshing and incredible magic system to it, along with lovable characters. Heliotrope is a self-published sword and sorcery fantasy that has a carefully woven story through the eyes of an endearing protagonist. In this, we follow Telio, a retired soldier who wants nothing more than a quiet life after years of war, and spends his day working as a stonemason. After years of looking for his kidnapped son and grieving the loss of his daughter and wife, he comes across a war orphan. Rescuing this orphan from the abuse of his caretakers, he takes him on as an apprentice. By request of the queen, he begins working at the castle, only to find himself in the middle of a coup, thus starting the journey to protect his new family and discover the ancient secrets of a magic lost to time. Telio immediately captured my heart. His character often reminded me of a thoughtful and pragmatic father figure who must balance what is best for his foster family in addition to trying to keep them safe. As this story is told through Telio's perspective, we get an in-depth look at his personality and choices, which helped create impactful scenes. With his pragmatic look to life, kindness, and willingness to do what is right, Telio became a compelling character. Now, it is no secret that I love the found family trope, and this was no exception. Each character felt distinct, and their relationships were well built, giving a great dynamic between all of them. Palmer Pickering beautifully captured a family brought together through circumstance and tested those bonds in unexpected ways. Overall, I appreciated that the characters' growth and their relationships were built in meaningful ways through circumstances, action, and time, rather than for the necessity of the plot. The story also builds as we follow these characters along their journey, with each step giving these characters new threats or discoveries along the way. Every development from the characters, world, and magic felt natural throughout the story's progression, along with some satisfying tie-ins throughout. Let's talk about the magic for a moment. Though magic in this world has been outlawed, it lingers in the blood of descendants and throughout children's tales. As a result, the characters know little of magic, but I love being able to discover the magic alongside them. With flying sword-fighting mages and those who can weave magic into the world around them, this magic system felt unique and well built. Now, Heliotrope is a chunky book at 784 pages, and it does have a slow burn to it. However, the story unfolds in a way that feels incredibly personal, giving us heartwarming and gut-wrenching moments. As mentioned, I ended up immersion reading this with the physical copy and the audiobook. The narrator, George Goodall, was the perfect choice for Telio's character and to deliver this story, and I will never hear Telio's voice in any other way. He managed to capture the character's personality and emotions in an effortless performance. From his rich voice, pacing, and tone, this felt like a story being told by the fire. I'll definitely be looking for more audiobooks from this narrator in future, and like I said, I cannot hear Telio's voice in any other way at this point. Overall, this was an immersive read with endearing characters, found family, impactful scenes, compelling magic, and great battle scenes, all while creating a very human experience. Overall, I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I loved Telio's character, the found family that we got, and the magic just felt so refreshing. Along with the slow burn and the very human experience, this was just a fantastic read. I'd highly recommend this for any fantasy fan out there who's looking for their slow burn read with incredible characters. After that, I read Legend by David Gemmel. This came highly recommended to me from Andrew over at Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and this was my first dive into David Gemmel's writing. This was a poetic tale of war and those caught at fate's door. This really pulled me into the lives of people who stand at the front lines with no hope of winning, with emotional scenes between gritty battles, This was just a captivating read. The story here follows Druss, a legendary soldier who is called back to battle in a hopeless war. The old veteran has several battles behind his name, but can he live up to his own legends? This was a purposeful story with quotable lines, great action, well-crafted scenes, and the more I read, the better it got. The story follows multiple points of views and gives us different perspectives on the war and its impacts. While Druss is a main character, he was not the only one to stand out as a favorite for me or get great development. There were several aspects that I enjoyed in this. However, the beginning did feel rushed for me, with events happening quickly in order to set up the story for the war itself. Despite this, everything that followed was well executed and engaging, from themes of grief and just raw emotional moments from these characters, hope and fear. This had plenty of human moments in it between all of the gritty battles. Legend is definitely one of those stories that will sit with me for some time due to its emotional impact. I am looking forward to continuing the series as I did have a great time with this. Overall, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Afterwards, I read In the Sky by Joseph D. Slater. I did receive this copy in exchange for an honest review from the author, and this was a swashbuckling adventure filled with dragons and suspense. This self-published fantasy follows 3 young women and the conflicts that quickly find them. Through this multi-POV story following Esmeralda, a young dragon rider who is struggling between her free spirit and the empire she serves. Captain Harley, a fearsome pirate of the Loon's Cry, who is caught in her father's shadow, along with Bonnie, who is a kitchen's aide aboard the Loon's Cry, but she discovers there is a spy hidden amongst the crew. Told in third person, this is a character-driven narrative bringing you into the minds of these 3 young women. There's a personal touch to these characters as we get an in-depth look into their internal struggles, their fears, and goals. Each character also got various levels of development throughout the story, alongside gripping battles and emotional scenes. Now, when I say emotional scenes, I mean gut-punched and left in awe at well-crafted pivotal moments. There's also a diverse side cast to accompany these main characters in their respective stories. From rivals, family bonds, role models, and love interests, the relationships and their impacts on the characters were well explored. I was also pleasantly surprised about the world building. It felt refreshing as the setting takes place mostly on airships or on the backs of dragons. The author gives us just enough detail to get lost into the story. In terms of pacing, I did find the first half of the book to be a mix of slow and medium, with the second half jumping into a fast pace. While the author does take some time with setup in the beginning, the payoff towards the end was well worth it, with some memorable moments, self-discovery, religious orders, dragons, pirates, suspense, elements of flintlock, and some mystery woven in. This was a captivating and entertaining read. I'd love to read more from this world and will definitely be checking out Joseph D. Slater's other books as well. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I'd recommend this for anyone looking for their next fantasy with different elements all combined into it with some mystery. Finally, I read The Soul's Instruments by Mark Holloway. This is book 2 in the Aspect series, and ooh, this one was is a doozy. This brought together brutality, madness, friendship, and love, crafting a compelling sequel. The Aspect series is a self-published fantasy that leads into some darker themes. Overall, this has been a fast-paced adventure so far. The story here picks up after the events of The Soul's Aspect. Kellum, the butcher, hero, villain, a pale ghost that haunts the Empire or righteous revenant of Cassir. Titles thrust upon him that he had no desire to bear, charged by the Aspect itself to end the Vin Empire. And yet his only true desire is to get to mercy before the Empire, to salvage his only chance at redemption. But change is coming. He can feel it in the crushing weight of his waking nightmares. See it in the uprisings in the Empire, hear it in the hushed rumors of assassinations. The Aspect demands retribution, balance. Where there was once order, now comes chaos. With how book 1 left off, I was eager to jump into the sequel. Let me just say that Mark Holloway did not disappoint and avoided the pitfalls of the sequel slump. I was hooked from the first chapter. The Soul's Instruments balances great character work, arcs, pacing, twists, action, along with all of the endearing and gripping scenes. I also can't forget to mention the elements of horror in this that gave me chills. We also get more exploration of the characters and their relationships in this one. Kellum in particular gets great character development in this, as we get to see him mature from the boy we first met. There's also the return of some familiar faces in this, where each of these characters get their own voice and arcs. I love getting to know these characters better and seeing how their roles impacted the plot. In terms of world building, the characters do travel more in this, so we do see more of the world as two countries are struggling for control. The magic system also gets more exploration, adding depth to both of these areas. Aside from the character arcs, the developments of the magic system were compelling and impacted the story in meaningful ways, making this a standout aspect to the book. Now, it's always a joy to see an author's writing skills improve, and this was no exception. Mark Holloway also manages to pull off the duality in the role that love plays and the extent someone will go to for those they cherish. From the atrocities of war, religious conflicts, PTSD representation, the impacts of vengeance and insanity, this was packed with moments of surprise, intense battles, and satisfying payoffs. By the time I finished this book, I wanted book 3 in my hands immediately. It is coming out soon, I believe at some point this year, and I am so eager to see what happens next. I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is a fantastic page turner and one I would recommend for anyone looking for their next epic fantasy read. Before we wrap up, I did want to share an honorable mention. I did read The Last Keeper by J.V. Hillard. I read this at a time where I was feeling quite overwhelmed with my personal life, but I just needed the distraction. As a result, I don't feel ready to review or share my experience with it aside from I enjoyed it at the time. I do want to reread this and review it properly, as I do want to give quality to anything that I read and review. So I do want to reread this and review it properly. Now, I will say for anyone who's looking for a bit of a classic fantasy taste along with prophecy and a coming of age story, I definitely recommend checking this one out. In the meantime, I will be rereading this soon, and I'm looking forward to sharing that experience with all of you. And that is everything I read in the month of April. I had a fantastic reading month, from new favorites and some that might be my top pick for this year so far. I'd love to know, what did you read in April? Did you participate in the readathon? If so, how was your experience and what was your new favorite read from April? As always, leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and take care of yourselves.